when I drive around, don't feel it up. Why it's getting colder when the sun come out.
Yellow and yellow? Is this a story time? Yes, it is. Sorry it took so long. This story is about toxic friends. It happened my sophomore year of college. I've basically been friends with the same group of people since freshman year, give or take some people who have transferred or stopped being our friends, etc. But it's basically been the same core group of 8 people. Then sophomore year comes around and this new girl transfers to our school and gets integrated into our friend group. My friends and I, we kind of just make fun of each other all the time. It's not that serious. We don't actually hate each other, but we act like we hate each other. And this girl was similar. She had a similar sense of humor, so we were all for it. Yeah, cool. Come hang out with us. And everything was fine for a while until halfway through the year. Things started changing. The girl that had transferred to our school kind of attached herself to this other girl that was in our friend group since freshman year. And they legitimately became inseparable. And the girl she attached herself on was actually my roommate. I post all the parts of my stories in a row, so part 2 coming right now. Toxic Friend Story Time Part 2. So the girl transferred and had attached herself to my roommate. I lived in a quad, so the 2 other girls lived with us as well. And I won't lie, I was probably the least close to my roommate. Here's where it gets juicy. This is Luke, he's one of my best friends. He is where the drama starts. Now don't get me wrong, I love him very much. But back then, he was kind of going through a phase of just being a dingbat. He and my roommate were besties since freshman year. And he was not being the greatest friend at that time. He was going through stuff, so it was kind of understandable, but you get the point. So my roommate, who literally is the least confrontational person I've ever met in my life, can't even make eye contact with you if she disagrees with you. Super passive. Honestly, it was really annoying. Instead of talking to Luke directly about hey, you're not being a really good friend, you're hurting my feelings, she just complained to the girl who had transferred to our school. Because they're besties now. I'm gonna post part 3 right now. Storytime about toxic friends part 3. So instead of talking to him directly to resolve the issue, she just complained about him to this new girl. In my personal opinion, I think they were probably bashing him behind closed doors for a while. I can kind of understand why my roommate was all ticked off, but this girl who just transferred had absolutely no business being as offended as she was. It was between Luke and my roommate, and it should not have involved anyone else. So time goes on, tension is building, they start hanging out with us less and less, until it's finals week of the first semester of sophomore year. Apparently, my roommate had set up a mediation with Luke through his roommate to talk to him. The rest of us in the friend group were oh my god, finally, you're gonna talk and resolve it. And they had a talk, and according to Luke, apparently everything was kind of resolved. They weren't gonna be best friends again, but they were cool now. And we had a huge lab final the next day because we were in the same class. And so I was just glad that it got over with before finals so that he could concentrate. But that is not what happened. Oh, at all. Posting part 4 right now. Storytime about toxic friends, part 4. So we had a really important final the next day. Everything seemed like it was resolved. And then I get a text at 1 a.m. from Luke. Of course I'm awake because who needs sleep? And he texted me, he's dude, this girl and your roommate are coming over to my room. They're in my apartment. Now our apartments, fortunately, were literally across the hall from each other, not even 10 feet away. So I was do you need me to come over there? I will come over there. And he's no, I just want to, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. And I was I'll come over there, I'll do it. And he's no, it's fine. So they come into his room while he's studying for our final. My roommate had already talked to him about her business, and it seemed like it was fine. And the girl who had transferred in just laid into him out of nowhere, saying all kinds of crap she had no right to be saying. In the middle of the night, right before an important final, which they knew that he had because we talked about it. We talked about it a lot that we had this final. Posting part 5 right now. Story about toxic friends, part 5. So the night before a final, 1 a.m., they burst into his room out of nowhere, completely uninvited. Apparently his roommate let them into their apartment. And this girl who transferred was saying all kinds of crap. To put it bluntly, she told him all the things that were horrible about him, and that she thinks that she didn't like about him, and things that he needed to work on. And told him that he needed to go to therapy more than once. Basically forcing her opinion on him and telling him a whole list of things that were bad about him. Which is totally something you do with somebody who has seasonal depression. In the middle of that seasonal depression. Which is why he was not being the greatest friend. But I digress. So an hour passes and he texts me all of what happened. And I'm fuming. Unbridled rage. At the fact that this chick thinks that she had the right to do that. When she has only known us a couple of months. Posting part 6 right now. Story time about toxic friends, part 6. So the next day comes, I wake up to go to our calculus class at 8 a.m. that I have with Luke. He doesn't show because he didn't get any sleep for, I don't know, maybe 2 people coming into his room in the middle of the night and telling him all these horrible things about himself that he already has problems with. So this girl that we had become friends with in class was like, hey, where's Luke? And this girl who we were friends with was roommates with the girl who had transferred. But she was super chill and we love her. So she's like, where's Luke? And I didn't know if she knew, and Luke asked me not to say anything because I knew everything that happened. So I was like, oh, he didn't get a lot of sleep, some crazy things happened last night. And she's like, oh yeah, I heard about that. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, a little bit. And I was like, I just don't know why they were there so late at night. And we were having this talk as we were walking to the cafeteria. We say bye, she goes to her room, I go to the cafeteria. Get myself some breakfast. Guess who's there? My roommate, this girl that transferred, and Luke's roommate. I had to act like I didn't know anything, so I sat with them. Posting part 7 right now. Storytime about toxic friends, part 7. This one's a long one. So I sat down at the table to have breakfast. I acted like everything was normal. I didn't say a dang thing. And then the girl that transferred apparently saw me talking to her roommate as we were walking to the cafeteria. And she goes, so I guess Luke told you everything, huh? And I was like, huh? Trying to feign ignorance. I don't really remember what she said because I kind of was just seeing red at this point. But she said something like, why are you talking to my roommate about stuff that's none of your business? It's no one else's business. And I was just like, huh? She assumed that I was talking shit about her to her roommate. And I said, for your information, all you talked about is that Luke wasn't in class this morning for reasons. And she just kept saying, I just don't understand why anybody else is, it's not their business, it's not their business. And I was like, bitch! So I was like, I don't know what you're trying to say, but he's our friend, and if you're gonna be mean to him, it's our business. And she gets up and leaves because she doesn't want to deal with it. Cause she knows I'm gonna lay into her. They're afraid of me, my mama bear. Posting part 8 right now. Story time about toxic friends, last part. So she leaves because she knows I'm gonna get at her, leaving me with my roommate and Luke's roommate. Might I add, my roommate and Luke were best friends for a really long time, and she was in the room while this girl was saying all these horrible things about Luke, and she didn't say a dang thing. She just stood there. So at this point, I'm so mad I'm crying because I could just imagine how Luke felt while this was happening. And Luke's roommate, who kind of knew what was going on, was like, we were just trying to have an intervention about his behavior because it was getting out of hand. And I was like, no, that is not an intervention. An intervention is something that happens out of love and concern. What y'all did was a straight up personal attack. Bullying. I just don't understand how you guys thought that was cool. I don't understand your mentality to think that that was cool in any way. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't the way it was supposed to be. My roommate wouldn't even look at me. She just stared at the table. No eye contact. So I got fed up and left. I still had to live with that girl for the rest of the year. We're not friends with them anymore. And to this day, she doesn't look at me.
My neighbors saw me naked. Story time. So sometimes a bitch sleeps naked because I get hot as fuck and because I heard a lot of good things about it. But anyways, this particular night, a bitch was naked and I woke up out of my slumber thirsty as fuck. I was literally feeling like SpongeBob when he went to Sandy's. But a bitch didn't put on clothes like a normal person because it was 3 o'clock in the morning and no one was up. So I thought it would be a good idea to get out of bed and get water naked. So I'm getting my water and minding my own business. And my boyfriend's mom decides to come out of the room. And she knew I was in the kitchen, but she didn't know I was naked. And she starts walking towards me. And I was like, oh, hell no. I wasn't about to have my boyfriend's mom see me naked. You got me fucked up. So I thought it would be a good idea to run outside the back door, which leads to our backyard. But because I did that, my boyfriend's mom obviously thought it was suspicious. So she opens the back door and calls my name. So I run through the side of the house to get to the front of the garage door. My thought process at the time, I was gonna put in the garage code to get into the house through the garage. But that didn't happen. Part 2 gonna be funny. My neighbors saw me naked. Story time. So I ran through the side of the house to get to the garage door that's in the front of the house. Keep in mind, I am bare booty cheeks naked, running outside just so my boyfriend's mom didn't see me naked. So I get to the garage door and I put in the code. The code wasn't working. And I'm just standing there freaking out like, no. I was standing right here, butt naked, trying to put in this code. And the fence is pretty low, so if my neighbors came out, they would definitely see me naked. Which is exactly what happened. It was 3 a.m. and my neighbors came out. I guess I was being super loud. So my neighbors came out and they're like, hey, who's over there? And I literally stood there frozen as fuck. Shook. I looked like a deer in headlight. After I was done freaking out, I thought it would be a good idea to book it. So I started running towards the front door. That was the dumbest decision ever because if I didn't do that, my neighbors probably wouldn't have seen me naked. Once I decided to make a run for it, the outside light came on because the light is triggered by a motion sensor. Then the light flashed on me and me and my neighbor just stared at each other like. Then I ran for the front door, which happened to be unlocked.
When I was in 4th grade, I started becoming friends with this girl, Maddie. She was the coolest girl in the grade. Everyone loved her. She wasn't a mean, popular girl, though. She was really nice. One day, Maddie invited me over for a sleepover, and I, of course, said yes. So I'm at Maddie's house. We're having a great time. But one thing I didn't tell Maddie is that I'm slightly lactose intolerant, and her dad made 3-cheese macaroni that night for dinner. But I was too nervous to say anything, so I ate the entire bowl. And then we started watching a movie, and I'm really not feeling good. So I go to the bathroom, and I take a huge shit. But for some reason, the toilet isn't flushing. It's not clogged, but you just can't flush. So I panic. I look through her bathroom cabinets and I find Ziploc bags. I reach into the toilet and I take my shit out and I put it in the Ziploc bag. And then I throw it out the window. A few weeks later in school, Maddie tells me that her mom is worried they have a peeping Tom coming to their house trying to scare them. Her mom called the police and asked them to keep an eye on her street. And when I asked Maddie why her mom thought that, she said, well, it's pretty gross, but he pooped in a Ziploc bag and threw it at our rose bushes. Maddie said my mom's really upset because the rose bushes are where my mom put my grandma's ashes. I was like, oh yeah, that's super scary. Hopefully they find the guy who did that. And hopefully Maddie never said my mom's really upset because
Crazy ass story time. 23 years ago, there was this mother of 2 children who just recently had a 3rd child. Soon after, the newborn baby was sleeping in the nursery while they were throwing a house party, and unfortunately, during the party, the house caught on fire. Everyone scrambles out of the house and they couldn't get to the baby, and then the cops concluded that the baby had died in the fire. But her other 2 kids made it out alive. And even though the cops told her that her baby had died, she refused to believe it. Many years later, the mother took her 2 children to a birthday party, and there was this other woman there with her child. And now the mother looks at that child and is in shock because she looks so much like her other 2 kids. She goes up to the little girl and says that she has bubble gum in her hair so that she can steal a few strands of her hair. She took it to a lab and they DNA tested it, and that little girl was her child. So it turns out many years ago during that house party, a woman that the mother knew went upstairs, took the baby, and started the fire so that the baby would be declared as dead and she could easily get away with kidnapping her. And then she ran from the cops and they can't find her.
So a woman just came in and she wanted 2 half-pound bags of turkey. And I said, okay, so you want a full pound but split into 2 bags? And she said, no. I want 2 half-pound bags of turkey. And I said, okay. All right. So, ma'am, do you want a full pound of turkey but in 2 bags of a half? No. And she was like, she cut me off. I hate being cut off. And she was like, no. I want 2 half-pound bags of turkey. And I said, ma'am, okay. Do you want a full pound of turkey? But it is split up into 2 1/2-pound bags. And she looked at me like I was trying to mess with her. Like I have the time or energy to mess with. And she said, what are you, some kind of smart ass? No, I want 2 half-pound bags of, I said, man, 2 half pounds is a full pound. Do you want a full pound, but in 2 half-pound bags? And she said, no, I want 2 pounds, each one 1/2 pound. And I said, so a full, listen, you don't have to if you can't. But if the merch link is in my bio and I very much want to quit.
If you're wondering if you're ugly or if boys are just insecure, go with the second option. In my high school math class, this kid always made fun of me, but like we were kind of homies. Like that was our relationship. We'd always joke, give each other homework, cheat off each other's tests. We'd both fail. Never was attracted to him. Like it was just very platonic. But on the last day of school, I remember this vividly. And I only remember this because my mom and my sister were in the car with me. He calls me, and confesses that he had the biggest crush on me. Mind you, he has a girlfriend. And I vividly remember in the phone call, he just said, Abby, you're like those girls in a painting. I can look at you forever. And I just said, oh, thanks. Again, this was my sophomore year of high school. No self-confidence. And no one called me back then, so my family was like, who was that? And I just said, oh, just a friend. He was asking about the homework. Homework on the last day of school. So yeah, you're not ugly. People are just scared.
So I know this is going to sound crazy, but I just flew across the country to meet a girl that I met on Tik Tok to help her drive back to her home in Miami. Here's the story. One of my videos came up on her For You page. She went to my Instagram, I saw her picture, and I was like, she's cute, so I stalked her page pretty hard and then slid into her DMs. We started texting a lot, and then I finally asked her on a FaceTime date, which I got pretty dressed up for, and then we talked a lot. We talked for a few hours every day for the next few weeks, and I was falling pretty hard. I secretly messaged her sister to see if I could send her a few of her favorite snacks, including an old hoodie I wore on a first date. She loved it. We kept talking, and then she was going to come back to Miami to stay with her family, and I had the idea, what if we go on a road trip? What better way to get to know somebody than drive across the country with them? She thought about it and said okay. I made sure to call her parents and let them know I would take care of their daughter, got a haircut, packed my bags, set my alarm, got in the car, thanks again mom, and drove super early to the airport. But here I am, going to meet a girl I met on TikTok in the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot of thoughts going on inside my head, and I know that maybe it won't work out, but maybe it will. Either way, we'll have a great story to tell. Stay tuned. So if you didn't see the first video, I flew across the country to meet a girl that I met on TikTok to help her drive back so she can be with her family in Miami. Here's what happened next. We met outside her car, and we were both relieved that neither of us were catfished. Phew. She took me to El Matador Beach in Malibu, where we had In-N-Out right on the beach. It was amazing. I also jumped in the water, and it was really cold. Met her sister's family, and we started our road trip. We drove through Vegas, and then tried to go to the Hoover Dam, but it was closed. But then found this cool little hike right around the corner. We had a little trouble with almond butter, but then we kept driving and watched the sunset on top of this beautiful mountain just south of the Grand Canyon. We set our alarms and got up super early to watch the sunrise at the Grand Canyon, and it was so worth it. And then... just kidding, but I did ask her to be my girlfriend, and we shared our first kiss. We drove for a bit more and had a picnic on the side of the road. Some people slept, and then we drove to El Paso, where we spent the night and started driving through Texas, had some Texas barbecue, and drove through Texas. We stopped for some spicy margaritas on the San Antonio River walk that hit some people harder than others. It feels like we're never leaving Texas. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos, I flew across the country to meet a girl that I met on TikTok to help her drive back to be with her family in Miami. So far we've met, we're officially dating, and we're still in Texas.
Much later.
We drove into one of these tornado tumbleweed things that was kind of cool until we eventually made it to Houston, where we stayed with her aunt and uncle, who made one of the best steaks I've ever had in my life. Yum. We spent the night, said goodbye, and then had to stop at New Orleans at Cafe Du Monde because beignets. Straight up delicious. We kept driving to the Panhandle, where we stayed at a hotel right on Panama City Beach, where we enjoyed the water and the sunshine, and then we packed our bags, and when I say we, I mean me. And then we got Whataburger. Man, we eat a lot. I had a little fun at one of the pit stops and said she couldn't get in unless she danced. Enjoy. Then we started the last leg of our trip before we meet each other's families.